All right, here we are set to talk about the game last night, the UFL championship game. It was a pretty competitive early, became a one-sided event, but we'll break it all down and go over how we did for the year here on a brand new episode of H-Town Pick'em. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Coach Kovo. As always, I'm joined by my former nose guard from Ridgepoint High School, Mike Obi.
So,
and, of course, my buddy, the longtime season ticket holder for the Houston Roughnecks, CP. And, as always, our renowned Renegades fan, Nick Beanie.
What's going on?
All right, fellas. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a great year. We're kind of just going to get to kick it around, talk about the game. It's Monday night we're recording this, so it's we're less than 24 hours, from the conclusion of the game. So let me put the graphic up and we'll kind of look at it. It was the Stallions blanking the Brahmas 25-0. I believe it was 8-0 at the end of the half. Right, it was a very defensive battle early on. Both teams trading punts. The Stallions were able to get on the scoreboard late. It was, I believe, their final drive of the half, kind of towards the end of the first half. They score, they get the conversion, they go in 8-0. They get the ball to start the second half and really kind of march down the field, to my recollection. So they end up scoring 3 touchdowns. Get the conversions on the first 2. They're not able to get the third conversion, and then they tack on a field goal. But I guess the biggest story was the offense for San Antonio. For me, as far as our picks, myself, CP, and I have them in green. These were all locks since it's the only game. But myself, CP, and Obi went with the Stallions. Nick went took the 3.5 points with the Brahmas. And really, the thing was the thing that I've been kind of talking about all year was just a concern about the Brahmas offense. You've seen the little bit of regression. We saw this with the Roughnecks last year, and even with the Seattle Sea Dragons. Like the run and shoot, in my opinion, it kind of starts getting figured out by the end of the season. Especially when you're playing playoff football, you're going to be facing really good defenses. And I just feel like so much of it is predicated around counting the numbers in the box and deciding if you're going to run inside or just pitch it out on the perimeter. But if they can play with 2 high safeties and still stop the run, which the Stallions were able to, I just think you don't have a lot of answers. And you kind of saw that. You saw Garbers and the Brahmas offense really not able to connect down the field and really stress that defense at all. So that was kind of my takeaway. It was something where I think the Brahmas defense is every bit as good as advertised. They played valiantly, but eventually you're going to break down, and that's exactly what happened. So those are my thoughts. We'll go ahead and start. CP, you're underneath me here on the screen, man. What were your thoughts from the game?
Sure. I was reading a news story, and my favorite comment was that the Brahmas should have wished the Stallions a happy Father's Day, because the Stallions just overall completely owned the Brahmas the entire game. And I think a lot of, an offense's ability to move the ball. And I think in modern day football, a lot of our offense, and I feel like I talk a lot about the quarterbacks, and I rate a lot of these teams based on the quarterback play. And the quarterback play for the Brahmas was poor in this game, and you just couldn't move the ball. Obviously, we had some of the stars like John Trey Kirkland have some fumbles, just not able to punch it in and get any points at all. So to be blanked in a championship game, not a great look overall for the Brahmas. Maybe even for the UFL and the eyeballs that were on it to watch this game, but. Complete domination from start to finish. Obviously, kind of kicked it into high gear at the end of the first half for the Stallions, and being able to finish. And great defensive play overall for the Stallions. We talked about the Brahmas being the best defense. Stallions have a pretty good defense too. Tizino, 9 tackles, 2 forced fumbles. I mean, just huge game for Tizino. He was probably that should have been the MVP of the game. I know Martinez, the quarterback, got it, but. Stallion, congrats to the Stallions on their 3-peat, 2 USFL championships and a UFL championship. So great job to them.
Yeah, well said, CP. I agree with you 100% on the Tizino, man. That's a great call. I couldn't agree with you more. And I guess there was some intrigue, right, as far as it was kind of put to bed during the week. Coach Holtz announced that he was going to go with Martinez. And I think a lot of us thought maybe we'd see some corral, especially when Martinez was, it was a struggle in that first half. But Coach sticked with Adrian. Nick, you're next on the screen, man. What were your thoughts from the game?
It was a very bad start for the Brahmas. You got to get some sort of offensive production. And I agree with you. The run and shoot, when it gets figured out, you got to start changing some things up. One big problem that I saw with this game is like we were talking about it in the text thread, and you were like, we can go down 38-0 if the Brahmas do the no huddle offense. But when you got nothing working for you, you got to start getting that ball downfield, start changing it up a bit, get that pass rush off you. Sometimes you have to throw your scheme out the window and then just, get away from the script and then start attacking it with a different approach. And I felt like the Brahmas didn't do it. I don't think this is a good look for AJ Smith. I think he looked pretty bad with that. And I don't know. We'll see how his future goes out. But when you start the half and you're down 8 to the Stallions, they are notorious for slow starts, then you can't. I didn't see how they were going to win that game because they were not going to move that ball and put some points on the board. So kind of a frustrating game to watch. I was cheering on the Brahmas clearly because I picked them, and it didn't look good. I think their defense was fine, but when you give the possession up back over to the Stallions that many times, I mean, I don't care how great your defense is, you're going to struggle in a game like that.
No, man. Well said, Nick. And I mean, it was tough for AJ. I mean, he's a young coach. I think he's 30, maybe. He's in his early 30s, So he's a young coach. And even, like I said, with the Sea Dragons last year, that was June Jones as OC, if I remember correctly. And so he's been doing this a long time. And even they had similar struggles, right, as they, advanced further into the season. And I just think it I kind of made the comparison. You don't see a lot of run and shoot at the highest level because I just feel like in the pros, I feel like San Antonio's offense so much, and Nick, you actually made this point during the year, like a lot of it was big play, right? McFarland busting plays or Kirkland making somebody miss. And they did that a little bit. I remember a swing pass out to McFarland, made a guy miss, got a first down. Kirkland did something similar. But over the course of a full game, just the Stallions tackle so well. And I think it's kind of the same reason why you don't see the option run in the pros. It's just these really good defenses just tackle so well that kind of scheme of just trying to read and go where they're not, like it's just it can be tough, right? And I feel like the Stallions kind of have more of a conventional pro style offense, and eventually it just start coming through form. So, Obi, what were your thoughts from the game, man?
Well, I think it kind of everything everyone has said, just to bring it all full circle. As far as we mentioned this in the test thread, Coach Koval, you mentioned this first and foremost, being that we're both defensive guys, you were my defensive coordinator. The one thing as you get to the higher levels is that defenses tackle better in space. The run and shoot is predicated on making guys miss and making the first guy miss and being able to get the yak. Well, a team like Birmingham, they really know how to tackle well. They tackle with good pursuit angles. They tackle with good discipline. So they're not going to miss a lot of tackles. As a result, you don't have your fastball. What happens whenever you lose your fastball? The thing that works for you, you really aren't prepared. You don't game plan, your ace in the hole. Okay, what are we going to do? This is our changeup. And as a result, you get down really quickly. Even if you do have a good defense like the Brahmas have, we always talked about our respect for their pass rush. Well, eventually you'll bend and you'll break, unfortunately. And I think that's kind of just the story about it. The Stallions, I mean, are they a dynasty now? I mean, it sucks because, it's a new league. So, well, they've only won one UFL championship. But, I mean, definitely commend the job they did. I know there were questions going into the championship about, what's going on? Are there distractions? I think they've answered. They put all that to bed. That it was just, hey, we know how to show up and get the job done. And that's what they did. So kudos to the Stallions winning their third championship in a row, two USFL, one UFL. And we'll see what happens going forward with the rest of the league.
Yeah, well said, Obi. A couple interesting storylines we can kick around for a second before we move on is just, I know defensive coordinator Corey Chamberlain kind of came under some fire after they, Coach Chavis stepped away from the team. There was a drop, but, I was just looking about Coach Chamberlain's background. I mean, he was the head coach of the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the CFL. I mean, he's a very accomplished coach in his own right. To me, head coach in the CFL, that's very prestigious. Honestly, it's a really good league. And so he knows what he's doing. And that was on full display last night. I mean, just great staff. I actually, was it Wade that won our UFM Coach of the Year? And I think Mike Nolan won the official UFL Coach of the Year. In that voting for the UFM, I actually voted for Skip Holtz personally for Coach of the Year, even though I think those other two are extremely deserving as well. But I just feel like Holtz is the best. I like his background being a collegiate coach because as a collegiate head coach, you kind of have that CEO aura mentality where you're managing recruiting and budgets and travel and all those kinds of things, And so I just think he does a really good job at this level, managing all those things. They played a really clean game. Nick, you talked about a bad look for the Brahmas offense or AJ. There were so many times they were late getting the play in. You know what I mean? Kind of like having to burn timeouts to, get the play in or take a delay game. There was a big was it trying to on a field goal block? They had 12 men on the field. Gave Birmingham a first down, if I remember correctly. I mean, there were just several of those kinds of mistakes that you saw at San Antonio's team that you didn't see out of Birmingham. So I just think Skip had them ready. Really impressive. We're talking about bad looks for the league. Anybody want his weigh in whether on any of those topics or the attendance? Obviously, it wasn't quite as good as what it would have been. I think it was reported at 29,000, if I read correctly. I don't know if that was just sold, not necessarily, people coming through the turnstile, but obviously it would have been more if the Battlehawks were there. But I thought it wasn't awful, and the fans that were there, they seemed loud and into it, in my opinion. But any thoughts before we move on, just big picture about the league going into next year or how it looked on TV? Just anybody want to weigh in before we look at our year-long records?
I'm good.
I mean, I thought the turnout was really nice, especially for the St. Louis Battlehawks not to make it to the finals. So I didn't think it was going to get above 20,000 for the, and I wouldn't blame any St. Louis Battlehawk fans for not joining that event. But it looked like a lot of them showed up. And what was really cool is you actually saw like DC fans, Roughneck fans. You saw like a good mixture of fans that are just here for the league. And the turnout ended up being pretty nice. So I was really impressed with the turnout. We'll find out about the ratings a little later. Ratings in general has gone up 37% from last year. So I think that's going to be a big plus for this league and why it's going to continue. But overall, attendance-wise, it was fine. I just wish we had a little better football game. But, we got what we got. So Stallions are good. Skip Holtz has got good attention to detail, like you said, and he seemed to really dish it out and get a big win.
Yeah, if there was going to be a participation trophy given out for this league, I think Battlehawks fans deserve that for participating and showing up because they did. They showed up every single week. So kudos to that fan base. Definitely jealous of that fan base. As far as I think winning would definitely do it for the Roughnecks. People will start to show up if they can do it. And then I also wanted to comment on the coaches and the coach of the year and the job that these two coaches did. Obviously, Skip Holtz coaches the best team, but we all in the power rankings had the Stallions as the best team. No one was debating that coming in here, that we all thought they were the best team. Whereas for the Brahmas and teams like the Panthers power rankings, we had them in probably the 7th and 8th spots. Most of us did anyway. For those two teams. So the job that Wade Phillips and Mike Nolan did with that group, that at least, initially we all thought would finish near the bottom of the league to be two playoff teams. Kudos to them as well. I think that they're totally deserving. Definitely, it could either go Wade or Nolan as far as the coach of the year. Nolan ends up getting it, but the job those two coaches did with those two franchises, I think is to be commended, at least for this season.
Do you guys think Anthony Becht? I mean, because he also finished with an identical 7-3 record. Because the award was given before the playoffs, correct? So, I mean, I guess if Battlehawks fans that are tuning in, they may be thinking like, "Hey, it's a regular season award. We were right there." I mean, do you feel like there was a tier break between your Nolan and your Wade, and then down to Becht? I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I think the MVP, or I'm sorry, most best coach of the year and things like that. It's really a goofy award. It's just like Kobe Bryant should have won it how many years in a row back in the NBA, or Michael Jordan should have won 6 in a row, right? Because he was the best, most valuable player. But you're just looking for standouts, good comeback stories. That's what gravitates voters, and I think that's what ended up happening over here. So I think. Anthony Becht, his expectations were pretty high going into the league, and that's probably why he didn't end up getting the votes, where the Brahmas and the Panthers, the expectations were relatively low. So when something good happens in that, they typically get the vote.
Yep, I agree with you guys 100% on that. Obi, any final thoughts, man?
Yeah, man, I think, obviously these guys, they made the playoffs and their teams really had the success that they had for the reasons, there's a reason why they were in the final 3. But definitely, I think, like CP said, the Brahmas and the Panthers earn my respect for pledge, because I had them towards the bottom. I think the Brahmas, I had them 7 out of 8 teams. And I think the Panthers, I was very skeptical because of what they did last year. So the amount of improvement that they made from last year to this year, you have to commend for sure. The Stallions, they came in, and honestly, you got to respect teams that are able to be the hunted now and still able to take care of business, for me, because it's very easy to rest on your laurels and to get comfortable, right? But at the end of the day, they came back and they came back and repeated. They got a third championship. So while we talk about the guys who probably should have won Coach of the Year, you also have to credit the champions for continuing to take care of business and set the example, because it keeps the standard high. Now we're looking at, can the Stallions going in next year, can they win 4? Because I don't think that's, even in all leagues, it's hard to do, let alone in professional leagues, but in all league, it's very difficult to win 2, let alone 3, and going into 4 championships in a row.
All right, great stuff, Obi. Now let's take a quick break, and we will move on to look back at our overall standings for the year. All right, so looking at the overall standings, all of us got above 50%. We kind of finished fairly strong. So Nick and myself, 51, 55%. Obi had a great season, man. Great strong finish, Obi, to get up to 60%. And then CP was pacing us all year, man. CP, you want to give a speech? You are our champion, man, for the year-long picking, 65% in Fuego.
Yeah, I was debating whether or not to do this, but I definitely feel like I have to. So this year, my motto, was don't be smart. So in the essence of that, the way that I did my picks this year, and I'm talking. So my wife is smart in so many ways that aren't UFL football. That's maybe the only thing that I have, that's above her. So what I would do before every pick is I would have my wife give all the picks, and I would have veto power this entire year. So my wife, Kayla, made the majority, if not all, of these picks. So just to let you guys know, even though my name's attached to the picks this year, I only had veto power. So I let her take it. I gave her the spreads. She made the pick, not knowing much beyond anything else. The only thing she knew about was what I would talk about. That's all she knew. So she knew the good teams. She knew the bad teams. And it was all dependent on the spread, if it was too big or too small. So as far as this year, somewhat of an experiment for me to go this route. But hey, it paid off. So, when it comes to picking for the UFL, again, don't be smart. Just pick what you think is going to happen. And it turns out we were right 65% of the time.
Love it, man. Way to go, Kayla. Shout out to Kayla. She did that's a great job, 65%. And I love that strategy, CP. That was awesome. As far as our locks, we tried to theoretically these would be higher, right? Like we thought these were our best picks, but CP did great at 66, Obi 58, but myself and Nick, we kind of fell short of where we wanted to be. So we'll try to do better. But this year, if you tailed CP and then you tailed our sweeps, and that's when all 4 of us picked the same side. So that happened 14 times this year. We hit 71% of those. So like CP was saying, like those kind of things where it's kind of I don't know, no brainer is the right term, but just like it feels like a sure thing. We actually did hit on those. So great job. Love hearing that. So let's take a look at the final. We had the standings here. That's something that there was the cream rose to the top, right? You had your 4 playoff teams that are pretty clear. We look back at these odds. CP and Nick did a great job, stumping for both Wade and Coach Nolan for Coach of the Year. Because look at these preseason expectations. I really agree with what y'all said. Because Skip is a great coach, but also the expectation is high, right? They had the shortest odds, longest odds were the Panthers and the Stallions, and both of them did advance to the playoffs. So in here, you just kind of saw how it shifted throughout the year, and then these were the last 4. But before we kind of move on to our last segment, guys, anybody want to just talk about this futures aspect of it, or?
I wonder what you guys would have thought for people who bet on DC, because that they had the second highest odds, and they missed the playoffs. So I guess what fan base, what person do you think feels the worst out of their picks? Like for the Stallions, okay, you showed up, they were the favorite, they won the championship, cool. For the Brahmas, the Panthers, it's like, okay, they had the lowest odds, so you probably won the most money. But for the Battlehawks fans, the Renegades fans, the Roughnecks fans, us here in Houston, and even the Showboats, what do you guys think that their fan bases feel at this moment, now that everything's done and dust settled?
It's a great question.
Well, I can tell you as a Renegade fan, it doesn't feel good.
I had to.
It was disappointing. I had them as the second overall. I thought they would lose to the Stallions. So Renegades-wise, I was feeling pretty positive about them. And CP was too. I know he was. So, little bit of a shocker. And by the time they started getting good, it was too late. I mean, they were losing so many close games. If they got it within, a couple W's before, I think they could have done something in the playoff. They have a unique offense compared to the other teams, and they could have done something, but didn't end up happening. So I'm sitting here depressed, Obi, to be fair, but hopefully we'll get them next year.
There's always next year.
Always. That's a Dallas Cowboy motto, and apparently a Renegade one too. Okay, so I'll root on to the next year.
It's
I mean, CP, could you argue even Roughnecks fans might be some of the most disappointed? Because, I mean, I was listening to Ace on Polar Opposites, the talk show of Webb, and he made the great point that he was so high on this Brahmas futures pick because he didn't see them as what were they, 2-8 or 3-7 last year of Hines Ward. He didn't see them as that team. He saw them as a 7-3 Houston Roughnecks, right? Because that's kind of a lot of the frame or the skeleton of that team is Houston Roughnecks from last year, right? The coaching staff was with AJ and Wade, and then several of the players like a Devontae Beckett and a Kirkland. I mean, those are former Roughnecks. So do you think we have a right to be disappointed here in Houston? I'm curious your thoughts as a longtime season ticket holder.
Yeah, I think the Roughnecks definitely have the have the right to feel kind of somewhat cheated this season as well. You watch the Brahmas sort of go off and go to the championship with your coaches, your players from previous years. Mm-hmm. And you take on a team that's been a 500 team. I think they were just above 500 here 2 years ago. And that's what you get. And you expect maybe a 500 team, again, a middle team. I think most of our power rankings, especially as you see the odds here, kind of a middle team. And they end up being the worst team in the league, get one win against the Renegades. So yeah, I definitely have a right to be upset with this season. I see Nick smiling, a little jab there. But yeah, it's been a disappointment overall. So I hope Roughnecks fans get excited for change. I hope change is coming because that's what I'm excited for as a Roughneck fan.
All right, fellas. So no more picks left to make. This was the last one of the regular season. I guess we'll just kind of finish it. We'll go around the horn. Anybody just have any final sign-off thoughts that you want to share before we wrap up this season?
I'll start. I hope the Stallions, I hope a lot of those players get jobs in other leagues and maybe potentially kind of move the needle a little bit, and disperse the wealth a little bit across the league because, just dominating for 3 straight years in whatever spring league that they're in. I really hope that there's some dispersal of talent there as these leagues should be, for players to be able to opportunities. I know the XFL was about opportunity. I think the UFL, they're just trying to be a separate league from some of these other leagues, the main leagues like your NFLs. But yeah, hopefully that there's a lot of change from top to bottom. And we see a little bit more parity this year because I think we saw the top teams performed really, really well. The bottom teams, it was not a lot of fun to watch, losing every single week. So excited for next year. I hope there's a next year. There should be a next year.
Yeah, I saw some discussion on Skip Holtz. Some people saying that he could potentially maybe even move on to college, and regain, become a P5 college football coach. But a lot of people were saying that, I think he likes this league. I think this is it's the perfect fit for him. He loves these guys. He talked about it in his post-game presser. He loves these guys because they want to get better. They're so hungry to get into the league, and so that they really receive coaching well. And it seems like the perfect marriage, match made in heaven. But Nick, what about you, man? Any final thoughts here before we wrap up the season?
Yeah, I mean, although both of our teams didn't do too hot this year, I will say it looks like the league is still relatively healthy. As I mentioned earlier, they had a 37% increase on ratings, which is the most important part, right? That's where you actually make your money is off viewership and advertising. So that's really good for the league. I think it is going to continue until 2025, and hopefully it goes up even more. The most important part of this league is the product. And I do think the product was awesome. Like, it was really, really good football that we were watching over year. I kept on, stating that throughout the year that this is a good league. This isn't bad football. I would know if it's bad football just because, you'd see boneheaded plays and things like that. Even compared to the XFL last year, there were a lot of teams, including when the beginning of the season for the Renegades with Blitt and other quarterbacks making some boneheaded plays and not looking like a really nice, crisp offense. This looks 10 times better. So I think this is a good start for the league. We've got the most important part down. Now it's just that slow growth that I think we're going to get each year, and hopefully they keep it going. I think they will keep it going for 2025. And I think we got a wonderful product going forward. So I really like what I was seeing on the radio station that I listen to, although they probably don't need the shout out. We need it more than them, but 96.7 The Ticket over in Dallas. I heard 2 segments involving UFL football for that to make it to the zeitgeist, especially when the Mavericks are in the finals. It's pretty good stuff. U.S. Open, well, what a wonderful finish that was. So it's good sports radio, and they still talked about the UFL championship. Daryl the Moose Johnson hopped on, and he was talking about some things that got me motivated. I got a really good segment involving him on the hard line. So overall, I'm pretty excited about the upcoming year. Hopefully my team does a little bit better, but the product itself, UFL, looks like it's going to stay strong, and hopefully will increase next year.
All right, good stuff. Obi, you got the final word, man. Any final thoughts?
Well, I just think that it kind of, just to sum it all up, I think that the state of the league and where it is healthy. I think that this was a positive first year of UFL football. I know we've talked about USFL, XFL, but when you combine 2 leagues and you merge them together, sometimes it doesn't always bode well. But I think this first year really went off with a hitch, and obviously they'll iron out a lot of the wrinkles. They'll go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what went well this year, what didn't? And that's what you have to do with business. You can't be rigid. You have to just be able to adapt. And I think this is where we go to adaptations. Change is coming, to what CP said. Change is coming for the whole league. The good teams, you got to retool, you got to improve, because you're going to have losses, guys are going to move on. And then for the teams that didn't have success, you got to find ways to improve from within. And you got to find ways to get better, because at the end of the day, if the league is good, if the product is good, everybody wins when everything grows. So I enjoyed the league. I enjoyed the product, definitely. I mean, much more competitiveness, much more parity. The talent was much better, a lot cleaner game than last year's 2 leagues. So from there, they just got to keep on going, keep on pushing, and, sky's the limit for the league. I think this is in a good place.
100%. So, yeah, optimistic tone from all of us, man. It was fun. Appreciate all you guys tuning in and supporting the show. Appreciate all y'all, for coming out here and putting in the work here every week. And we had a good time. We appreciate everybody. We'll go, we can't wait already for next year, because we love this stuff. But thanks, as always, for tuning in, and we'll catch y'all down the road.